The wizards are the master of spells in Baldurs Gate 3. You'll know the most spells, you'll deal insane elemental damage, and you'll look positively smashing while doing it. Today we're going to go through how to play the wizard, the best spells, cantrips, feats, and more, so let's go! Let me know in the comments which of the spells is your favorite, and these class guides are designed to teach you the mechanics of a class and everything you need to know to succeed. I'll have a link here to the playlist which contains all of the different classes once they will come out. So the wizard is an interesting class. Now you could basically categorize it as a bit of a glass cannon. They have a very large spell pool which gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of any sort of a combat encounter to deal different types of elemental damage. So if enemies are resistant to one type, you can then modify the spells you're using to use different types. You can also have access to plenty of different spells that can manipulate enemies, say, have them on the ground laying laughter, like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, or other ways to put them to sleep or something like that. You've got plenty of flexibility as a wizard, but the downside here is that you have no armor proficiency or really any relevant or good weapon proficiency, and you also have a very low health pool. So you'll definitely be wanting to avoid damage by various methods, which we'll talk about in this video, but you'll have access to a huge amount of spells because you can learn spells just from scrolls to really gain sort of benefits from the flexibility of the kit. Now, you will also have arcane recovery, so once per day out of combat, you can replenish expended spell slots, which is obviously important so you can cast more spells. But let's make a wizard. So we'll start with the best races. Now, obviously, you can just roleplay here as you see fit, but as a wizard, movement speed doesn't really matter, so playing a taller or a shorter character doesn't matter that much. Neither does dark vision because we'll mostly be using spells. So you can really sort of grab anything here that you want to. Like, you could go something that maybe has a proficiency in something you might like, say like a human or a half elf, if you say you wanted to equip a shield for some extra armor class to avoid a little bit more damage, or maybe you want to go like an elf so you can equip a longbow or a short bow just in case you run out of spell slots. I also really like halfling for a wizard, so you get the lucky racial effect. So when you roll a 1 on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can re-roll that dice so to prevent you from rolling 1s a couple of times. But yeah, really you can go anything as a wizard. There's not too much sort of restriction there. In terms of the best skills for the wizard, you definitely want to be leaning into the intelligence skills here. So arcana, history, investigation, nature, and religion. And the same goes for backgrounds, which are a little bit more roleplay, but you could go acolyte, noble, or sage, which all have intelligence skills, so you don't have to worry about picking them in terms of your skill slots. For your ability points, you want to focus on intelligence, dexterity, and constitution. You want to max out your intelligence as close as you can to 17, and then con and dex, you probably want to get to 14 if you can, because of that positive number benefits you get from having that, and then you can sort of spread out any other relevant ability points as you sort of see fit. Now, we'll cover cantrips and spells in a little bit because we're going to sort of cover them all together rather than the ones to worry about just in character creation. The next major decision comes at level 2, which is picking a subclass. Now, you may notice that all spells have listed what type of spell they are, whether they're evocation, necromancy, illusion, transmutation, etc. And there is a matching school for all of these for the wizard. So specializing in one of these schools will halve the cost of actually learning a spell from that school from a scroll. So wizards can learn spells from scrolls. So if you say specialize in something like evocation and you've got an evocation scroll, the cost of learning that spell off the scroll will be cheaper, but you'll also gain different class or subclass benefits from those. Now, it's really up to you and what you want to sort of use here. My recommendation, if you're building out sort of a damaged, focused wizard, which is what I'm sort of talking about here with Gale, is probably either to go aberration, evocation, or necromancy. But invocation is definitely the stronger one for some of the AoE spells. So because you get sculpt spells, you can create pockets of safety within your evocation spells, so allies will automatically succeed saving throws against spells and take no damage. So a great example of this is something like Fireball, which is a huge spell that does a heap of damage, and it's absolutely an essential spell for a wizard. You can then just throw it on your, say, melee characters who are probably surrounded by enemies, and it doesn't matter because they won't take damage from that. So you get benefits definitely from using that, and evocation is really powerful because of that. But you could go something like the Necromancer for Grim Harbors. So once per turn, if you kill a creature with a spell, you regain hit points equal to twice the spell slot level used. So if you, say, struggle with survivability, which wizards absolutely do, then it can help you survive a little bit better. But there are other ways to avoid that, which we'll talk about in a bit as well. But you've really got the option here, and you can always just respec if you, say, wanted to change the subclass that you're focusing on. But for the most part, wizards will always learn the same spells. It's just what you want to specialize in. Leveling up as a wizard is pretty straightforward, as you'll just learn more spells and spell slots that you can sort of pick from, but every 4 levels you will gain a feat. Now, as a wizard, It's interesting to see what you can pick here. There's nothing that I would say is absolutely critical. It's a little bit dependent on your flavor. The mage initiates for all of the different mage classes can give you some interesting cantrips. Say, for example, if you wanted to learn Eldritch Blast from the Warlock school, or something like ritual casting, which will allow you to learn some different spells like speak to animals or find familiar so you could summon creatures. Spell Sniper is good as well, so you can learn a cantrip and the number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 1. So if you roll a 19 or a 20, then it will technically be a critical hit, and you can learn Eldritch Blast from that, or say Thorn Whip or something as well. But something that I would sort of probably suggest mostly, it would be Elemental Adept. So you can pick a category here and your spells ignore resistance to that damage type of your choice, and when you cast spells of that type, you can't roll a 1. I would do this and pick Fire for all of the really good fire spells. Not only do you have Firebolt as a cantrip, you've got Fireball, which is a massive AoE damage. You've got Wall of Fire, which deals good damage as well. So ignoring those resistances is a really good benefit just to the overall damage, because a lot of enemies have resistance to a lot of different element types, and fire seems to be a very common one, so it's a good one to avoid. But plus, with all the good fire spells, definitely gives you benefits from that. Now, when you pick your next feat at level 8, it's again sort of up to you. Like we've already talked about those other choices, but the one we haven't touched on is Ability Improvement, which you could definitely pick up, so you could get your intelligence to 18, being that next even number, so you can add that extra damage and rolling to your saving throws and spellcasting modifiers. So you could definitely do that, and obviously pick any of the other options that I mentioned, or something else, you know, if you want to. Spells and cantrips, they are the core part of the wizard kit. Now, we already touched on how you can learn spells via scrolls, which you can definitely do, but we're going to go through some sort of good options here. But because as a wizard you can prepare your own spells at any time, you can essentially decide what you like and dislike, and that's sort of up to you. But we'll just cover off some good ones here. For cantrips, some good range damage options like Firebolt, Acid Splash, and Ray of Frost are really good options to run, especially Firebolt and Ray of Frost. Mage Hand kind of sucks right now. I talked about that in my Rogue video, that it only lasts a certain period of time. It can only be used every second short rest. It's not as good as it used to be in the early access. Dancing Light also has its moments, say if you want to help out some ranged allies that don't have dark vision. For spells, the main one that is an absolute must is Mage Armor, so you can increase your armor class by 3, so you will definitely avoid more damage as a wizard, which is highly advisable. Magic Missile is amazing. It does force damage, and it also always hits, and as you level this up, like it will just level with you, so you can use like level 3, level 4 spell slots for Magic Missile, deal more damage, be able to use more missiles. It's absolutely a well worth spell to get. And something like Ray of Sickness or Ice Knife are both good ranged options as well. Thunder Wave is a good option to sort of push enemies away from you, but once you get level 2 spells and sort of beyond, you'll be able to get Misty Step, and you can sort of drop Thunder Wave so you can Misty Step away from enemies as a bonus action. I definitely use this heaps. Chromatic Orb is amazing because you can tailor the damage type to the enemy's resistances. So if you right click and examine them and be like, oh, okay, you're resistant to, let's say, fire damage, then I could use Chromatic Orb as, say, lightning damage or something like that. So you can be aware of those resistances and sort of modify the damage type dependent. Sleep and Tasha's Hideous Laughter and those sort of spells that can stun or, you know, like lock enemies from taking their turns can also be valuable. I like Tasha's Hideous Laughter a little bit more than Sleep, because Sleep is dependent on the amount of hit points that the target has, whereas Tasha's Hideous Laughter is a saving throw. And then there's the fire spells like Fireball and Scorching Ray, which we obviously touched on a little bit earlier, which you'll need if you are picking up the Elemental Adapt for fire like we talked about. The last thing that I'll say for spells is Counterspell is incredible. So grab this as soon as it becomes available to you at level 3 when you're looking at your level 3 spell slots. Now, essentially what this does is it gives you a reaction as a wizard, which you typically won't use in any sort of other way. And anytime someone casts a spell within your radius, you will then get the option to react to that and counter that spell. This is huge in a number of scenarios where you're fighting other wizards that have unique spells, especially in some combat scenarios that they will be using spells that aren't typically available in the main pool, like maybe they're specific to like that sort of, you know, boss encounter or enemy type, and you can then counter spell that. You will use a spell slot for using that, but saving your level 3, level 4, etc. spell slots for counter spells can often be really critical in certain encounters that you have enemies that just deal like really critical spells that change the way the fight flows. It's highly recommended. A couple of other little class tips: you can do a little cheeky save scumming before you initiate combat, because with the wizard you can just prepare your spells as you sort of see fit, right? So if you know a fight's going to happen, you can start that fight, check what the resistances are, check what sort of the setup is, and then just reload that save and change your prepared spells. Misty Step is absolutely huge to avoid damage. You should be Misty Stepping at any time that anyone comes near you to avoid damage and get away from them, also get to high ground. The Bark Skin Potion that you can craft in the alchemy screen can also give you 16 armor class rather than having to use mage armor if you don't want to waste a spell slot. This is beneficial in the early game when spell slots are a little bit more limited, but as you get further in the game, it's not so much of a big deal. And as a wizard, because you're casting a lot of elemental spells, pay attention to the elemental effects on the ground. Say, for example, if you cast the grease spell, you can then light that grease with fire to create an explosion to deal damage, and you can then put out that fire with something like Ray of Frost to clear that fire out of the way. So pay attention to those different spells and the way they interact on the ground and the different things. There's also barrels you can blow up and all sorts of stuff. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.